But that Will Ospreay Kyle Fletcher match, man, you want to talk about brutal. And when it comes to blood loss in the cage match, that was wild. What'd you think of that one, Jeff?
You know, I don't even really know where to start. And okay, so I guess you want me to start on the cage match, but before I dive into that, because I will. Well, shit, Conrad, you got me all rattled here. Starting off on the cage match, I thought we may save that till the end. But with that being said, are those the two best athletes, pure athletes on our roster? They're certainly right up there. And when you throw the element of the cage, and I said on 0 Hour that Kyle Fletcher in his very first cage match, which he's been around, not a long time, but I mean, he's been wrestling 7, 8, 9 years and never be in a cage match. And to be in a cage match in LA
on pay-per-view
against Will Ospreay, man, the stakes went up, but I got to give him a ton of credit. Talk about rising to the occasion. And I know those guys are very familiar with each other's offense, I guess you could say, and defense. But man, we said it last week. Is it going to start the show? Is it going to close the show? Conrad, we were both wrong. So the flow of the show was kind of mind-numbing, man, in a positive way. Conrad, at the end of 0 Hour, I looked over at RJ and Renee, and I'm thinking that was just kicking things off. We did 90 minutes of 0 Hour and 4 matches, and the Jericho segment was super wild, and Big Boom and AJ. I love the Riz. What'd you think about the Riz Sunday night?
Is that not one of the greatest things in AEW history? I mean, the Rizzler coming out with Orange Cassidy. When he came out, he got a hero's welcome. Super fun. I mean, I guess the question is, if you are ever lucky enough to share the screen with the Rizzler, do you think you can get my man like a little ukulele or something to come out with you? That could be badass.
Without question. I mean, you got to get him a little red. Get him sunglasses. He looked good, though. But yeah, I thought 0 Hour was maybe the best 0 Hour we had done. It loaded up with star power, lots of action on that as well. So, yeah, I mean, the people that came out, and there was a lot of folks in the house. Still hard for me to call it crypto.com arena. I still want to go back into Staples, and I talked to several folks that were local that were working on the production side of 0 Hour, and they said, don't feel bad. We all still call it Staples. And I said, I bet Staples loves that. And crypto.com may not. But great facility. And the plaza we were doing it at, Conrad, you can only imagine I was in hog heaven. I got to look down in the plaza, and there's statues of Shaq and Jerry West and Luke Robitaille and Oscar De La Hoya and Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And the folks were filing into the building. So I had a blast doing 0 Hour. So a lot of fun. What an event. The 6th installment, that was the 7th, but there's been 6 of them, and pretty monumental. Moxley won his first title there. Sting match last year. MJF Danielson a couple of years ago. It is. We talked about name value. I'd say in a lot of ways the revolutionary brand of a premium live event / pay-per-view is building quite the equity, sir.
The kings of pay-per-view, that's what AEW is these days. And the king of wrestling for several years is now again the international champion. Kenny Omega bested Takeshita to take home that championship. And I, for one, am pumped for Kenny Omega being back. That is a major piece of the AEW puzzle. And in the main event, of course, we had the world title with Jon Moxley and Cope. Christian inserted himself there. We saw a little interaction with Swerve now that he's the #1 contender. So I guess Swerve and Moxley is up next. But what everyone was talking about on the other side of the pay-per-view is the once-in-a-lifetime performance, the Hollywood ending, and arguably the greatest story in AEW history. Toni Storm and Mariah May. Toni Storm is your AEW Women's World Champion, but not without a ton of stops along the way. You see shards of broken glass. I haven't thought about that in wrestling since Ian and Axl Rotten in ECW. the Taipei taped glass, what the hell are we doing fist match. I mean, they pulled out all the stops. Both of the ladies were bleeding buckets. This had a little Memphis flavor to it. What'd you think of that, Jeff?
I got a few different texts of folks that buddies of mine. Remember Robert Flores? I call him Roflo, ESPN, and he, me and him text back and forth. Hope he doesn't mind me sharing that. But he loved the show. High praise for lots of different events. But we were texting back and forth. He wanted my thoughts on that, and I'll kind of share what I text him. I said, Roflo, I said, athleticism, a real passion for the business, psychology, and I'm going to say good to great psychology. Yes, it's not for everybody. Maybe too much blood, maybe too much this, maybe too much that. In the words of Dutch Mantel, when you think you have crossed the line, compliment yourself or pat yourself on the back, because you want to go right up to that line. And at times, maybe on pay-per-view, you push through it. Knowing the history of their entire program and knowing what they're up against, and I'm saying in a competitive way, in a highly competitive way, the cage match, Omega. I mean, we could go MJF, Hanger could have main evented. I mean, there's a lot of matches that could have been show stealers and main eventers, and we talked about that last week. Hats off to both those ladies. They worked their ass off. In a lot of ways, Conrad, wouldn't you say that in a way that's the essence of our business? A story that plays out over months and months, and you get a conclusion. I thought the shot when it said the end and both lady warriors are down, I thought that was the old Shakespeare to the masses. It told, okay, that's the end of that book. So high praise for both those ladies.
I thought it was fantastic. I loved the ending shot where you see both of the ladies sprawled out and you get that shot from above. And as it pans out, if that's even the right word, we see the Jumbotron that says the end. I thought that was a cinematic ending. It was really, really awesome. I was a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of those ladies and can't wait to see what they do next. But anytime you come out of a pay-per-view and everyone says it was a great pay-per-view, but so-and-so should have closed, when there is a debate about what the best match was, that's a good thing, guys. It's not a bad thing. Yeah.
And look, man, I got into a rabbit hole. A guy in the lobby, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the word tribalism, came up, and I think he kept using the word divisive. And I said, opinionated, divisive, tribalism. I said, at the end of the day, we're all talking about professional wrestling. Yeah, society kind of has doubled down in the political rhetoric. I don't think I've ever used that properly, but the discourse and rhetoric in all of life. I mean, I said it last week. People are arguing about nonsense in football right now online. I follow a couple of insiders on NFL football, and you would literally think it's like they're deciding who's going to win the Super Bowl, as if that is an end all be all. But man, society's that way. But boy, professional wrestling, it is what an ongoing discussion. Sometimes it gets a little exhausting because it's like, what are they really arguing over this? But hey, man, you retweeted the AJ Styles quote or comment. I thought that kind of wraps up a lot about Revolution. There were several moments Sunday night that I think you would say, yep, I'm proud to be a wrestling fan.